Silver and gold investing is a bad idea. How you doing, everybody? Welcome to Empire Precious Metals. If you clicked on this video, that's because you are seeing this image of Dave Ramsey. He's a self-help, save your money kind of guru type of guy, financial expert, trying to get people out of debt and save their money through whether it's just hard work and savings, investing in the stock market and or real estate. Recently, he published a video about 8 months ago from the time of the recording of this video in which a caller calls in and they say that they are retired. They're 62 years old and they have about 10% of their net worth in silver and gold. And whether or not that was a good idea based on all the different factors that, stackers all point to, right? The war, inflation, instability, and unpredictability with the stock market. And here's what he says. So a caller calls in and they tell Dave Ramsey that they are retired. They're in their early 60s and they say that they have 10% of their savings in gold, silver, and bullion coins. And they said that they have their money invested in the 10% silver and gold because they are worried with disruptions in the economy, inflation, the Ukraine war, and possible problems with China. And they asked if whether or not it's a good idea or should they be invested in something else. So Dave Ramsey, he sits back and he says, well, listen, I'm 61 years old and I'm worth hundreds of millions of dollars and I have zero invested in silver and gold. And so the caller says, oh, that tells me a lot. And Dave Ramsey says, I'm invested in the stock market and in real estate. And he also makes the point that in the last 10 years, gold has averaged growth of 3.6%, whereas the stock market has averaged growth of nearly 12%. And so essentially, Dave is making the case that silver and gold is by and large garbage and that you don't necessarily need it. He also says that it has no intrinsic value. It's only worth what somebody's willing to pay you, and that the metals don't really yield you any good returns. So that's kind of going against what many people in the stacking community are always pointing to, the fact that there's this intrinsic value in silver and gold. So the caller hangs up. And Dave goes on to basically saying how gold and silver doesn't really make a lot of sense for people. Again, it's only worth what somebody's willing to pay you for, and so on and so forth. My argument would be, can't you say the same for real estate, right? Isn't real estate by and large only worth what somebody's willing to pay you for it? I guess it's not so much a commodity, but he definitely makes the case. He's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Says he's got zero invested in silver and gold. And so that kind of gets, the viewer thinking and wondering whether or not it actually is a good or a bad investment. So I will say this, it's very hard to argue with an individual such as like a Dave Ramsey who has hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of his net worth and states that he has zero invested in silver and gold. And you look at somebody like a Warren Buffett, who also doesn't believe in precious metals. Aside from that, that one quick thing that made headlines like a year or two ago where he did buy into some mining companies or what have you, like a silver mine, but he got out of it relatively quickly, if I'm not mistaken. But when you have some of these kind of like gurus who are big into investing and have a huge net worth, and they are stating that silver and gold really isn't like the best investment, I'm kind of curious as to what your thoughts are. Now for me, silver and gold, especially right now in times of the pandemic, you've got the war in Ukraine and you've got this increasing inflation. Silver and gold are not really acting like I know that I would have expected, and I know other people within the stacking community would not have expected as well. A lot of people I know have actually sold off their silver, maybe have a few pieces just for their collection, but they sold off all of their silver. I know other people that have sold off a bunch of their gold as well. whether it was to make some renovations in their home or to buy a second home. And I'll be completely frank with you, that's something that I've also been contemplating as well. This stuff is here as a savings. And, it's something that you can very easily liquidate, move in between, cash to metals and back to cash again if you need to. But there's some things that you also need to keep in mind, right? When you are selling, you do run the risk of actually losing money, especially if you're selling gold and silver when spot has taken a significant loss. You're going to run the risk of trying to sell it to somebody and you're hoping that they actually have the cash to buy it. Not every place that says we buy gold or a coin shop, not every place that typically buys it actually has the cash on hand to make the actual purchase. If you go in there with 5-10 ounces of gold, what's to say that that business hasn't already made several purchases prior to you arriving and they're actually out of cash? It's a possibility. They're not bottomless pits that have endless supply of cash to just buy every single thing that walks in the door. There can be a chance that they don't have cash on hand to make those purchases. A lot of these places are businesses and they're usually mom and pop shop type of places, and so they might not be able to buy the silver and gold that you walk in with. So you have to keep that into consideration. But silver and gold really have not been performing as well as, let's say, the stock market and or real estate. So let me ask you then the question, silver and gold, those of you that are stackers, do you still full-heartedly, and be honest here, do you still full-heartedly believe in the precious metals? Do you believe that silver and gold still have time to shine and haven't really seen their day and are going to just explode exponentially? Or have you started to kind of question stacking silver and gold? I'm curious. Let me know in the comments down below. Do you think Dave Ramsey makes a good point, or do you think he's just kind of full of hot air? Let me know in the comments down below.